All right, thanks everybody. Welcome back if you were here before, or welcome if you weren't here before. This is sort of our second half of the startup studio today at Learnovation. Again, the exits are over there to the right and behind you there if you need to get out. Also, I wanted to remind everyone that we have a live transcription service, so if you're having trouble hearing, as some people were at the beginning of the last session, due to audio reasons, there is a live transcription service, and you can get to it by hitting that QR code up there, and that will take you to a website which prints out everything that is being said here on the stage. We also have a Slido code. Slido is an app that allows you to ask questions of the panel, so I would encourage you, if you haven't downloaded it, to download it, and we have a code 3094914. Just punch that number in and you can ask questions, and I will moderate those feed them over to Conor, who's going to host this panel. So without further ado, we have this great Show Me the Funding panel. The idea being to talk about some of the funding resources available to startups in our Irish ecosystem. So we have Christian Stafford from Enterprise Ireland, he can introduce himself better. We have Mary McKenna from Awaken Angels. We have Helen McBreen from Atlantic Bridge Ventures. And moderating the panel is Conor Meaney at the end from PwC. He's a startup scale-up tax advisory lead over there. And I thought nobody better to encourage our funding panel to give us great nuggets of wisdom. So here, welcome them.
Yeah, I suppose just to kick off, further introduce yourselves. So I run the scale-up team in PwC Private. Launched a team in 2018 because we saw the economy take a welcome shift towards being heavily reliant on foreign direct investment and start to support Irish Indigenous businesses. So we've supported everything from early idea stage right up through to some successful exits. So we've seen the good days and the bad days and seen them all the way through. So Christian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, thanks Conor, and good afternoon everyone. My name's Christian Stafford. I'm the head of knowledge transfer and engagement in Enterprise Ireland. What does that mean, you might say? It's really about kind of connecting all of the kind of assets we have in the third level research ecosystem with industry. So we do that through lots of different kind of tools and supports, but really from a business perspective, it's about how can I access kind of talent, expertise, infrastructure, IP, and anything that can help drive kind of business growth for me from the kind of research ecosystem. So I manage a number of programs as part of that to support kind of bilateral academic industry collaboration. We also put resources into trying to develop IP-led startups from the research ecosystem, and also look after a research talent program, which is really on trying to get high-end research talent into SMEs in particular. So build our absorptive capacity, because from an EI perspective, we really want Indigenous industry and SMEs to be the primary driver of the Irish economy. That would be a 10, 15, 20-year journey. And certainly investment in research, development, innovation is going to be a critical part of that. So probably talk about some of these topics in the rest of the session. So thanks for that, Conor.
Mary?
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Mary McKenna. I am a Northern Irish exited EdTech founder. So I'm a person that's perhaps been in the shoes of some of you that's sitting out there in the audience today, thinking about how to get traction, raise investment, grow a business, meet the salaries every month, all the things that keep the startup founders awake at night. I sold, my business was called Learning Pool. Some of you might have heard about it. It's one of certainly Northern Ireland's big success stories. I sold my half of it about 10 years ago. At that point, we had bootstrapped, so we bootstrapped the business up to 100 employees, £10 million turnover, profitable from month 8 onwards. And since then, I don't work in the EdTech space anymore, but the EdTech world never lets you go. It just drags you back in. You never, ever get away. So I'm back here today as an angel investor. So these days I angel invest in women founders who are starting a business that is tech for good, where I can add some significant value through my own experience and network. So if any of you want to have a chat with me later, could just come up and buttonhole me after this session, okay?
And Helen?
Thanks, Conor. I'm Helen, McBreen and partner at Atlantic Bridge. We're a global VC firm. We're Irish founded and headquartered. We've offices globally and have a very significant funding platform investing from seed to growth in deep tech. We have soon to be 10 funds under management. We're doing a first close on 2 funds. One is an innovation fund, an earlier stage fund, and the other is a growth fund. That totals our assets under management over 1.5 billion. We've invested in over 170 companies globally. A significant portion of them are Irish, particularly at the early stage deep tech fund. So 10 years ago, I founded a platform called the University Fund, and we've 4 of the largest Irish universities invested in that fund alongside Enterprise Ireland and the European Investment Fund. We've invested in over 50 companies. They've gone on to raise over $1 billion, so 10 times more capital coming into the companies, and we bring those companies onto our platform to help them with all of the things that we're probably going to talk about in this panel, which is co-investment, capacity building, connectivity. There's probably a bunch more other C's in there as well, but they're mainly the things that we try to do to get companies through a scaling journey and provide a path to finance as companies scale from Ireland globally.
Very good. So as Christian, something that is often surprising, I suppose, is the lack of awareness of grant aid for companies that come into us, and it's the cheapest form of funding you can get, especially to get you to a certain stage. Could you talk a bit to some of the grant aid and financial support that Enterprise Ireland offer for early stage companies?
Sure, Conor. Yeah, that's probably quite a big question, as we have there's a lot of supports in play in the system. But I think your point around awareness is well made. There's a lot out there that maybe companies aren't aware of and don't lean into, and can be a really good complement on your journey to some of the more, I guess, traditional routes that starts with looking at in particular around kind of seed and venture. But maybe just to pick out a couple at different stages of the journey. So at the very kind of startup end, particularly if, and I don't know, in terms of the audience here and the Learnovate kind of program, we may have some kind of spin out founders, or we may have some ed tech or OD tech academics and researchers who have a great idea. So we actually have, unusually for an economic development agency, we have pre-seed funds that are, effectively grants, but they act as a pre-seed fund. It's called Commercialization Fund. It's 100% funding. It's non-dilutive. The catch is that it's a grant to the institution where you're based, but allows you to kind of de-risk your IP, develop your technology, develop the kind of commercial roadmap at really, kind of no impact to kind of the business, but kind of set you up in a kind of a kind of non-dilutive grant environment to build out the business and get it investor ready before you start talking to the colleagues on my right here. So it's something that's internationally, it's very well renowned. It's really kind of important part of the ecosystem here. So if you're a kind of researcher, we've got a great idea. It's something I would definitely be looking at and leaning into, and happy to speak to any kind of potential founders in that space, or speak to your technology transfer office in your institution. But also, if you're a founder already, or you're a CEO, or maybe you've exited already, or maybe you have a business and you're thinking about the next business after that, this also facilitates commercial leaders to come into the research ecosystem and find the next big idea and kind of match your commercial expertise with maybe the key opinion leader on the technology side, and put together a team that can drive the business and then dip into this comm fund. So we have about €1 billion a year that the state has invested in public research and spent kind of on an annual basis. So that's a lot of firepower. And I think maybe, there's a lot of opportunity in there, and we're not realizing all of it, I think we have to say. So I suppose one shout out for me is, look at what's out there, come talk to certainly myself and colleagues. There's opportunities, but there's also funding. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum. I suppose maybe something else to talk about that's maybe also less well known is maybe you're an existing startup or an SME. There's a lot of kind of funds that can help, I suppose, make your dilutive funding go a bit further. So I'll maybe call out a couple in particular. One is called Innovation Vouchers. It's 100% funded grant aid that a company, any company other than a large company, so a micro enterprise, a startup, a medium-sized enterprise, It's 100% funded. You come to online, you can apply online, but it gives you a 10k voucher, a bit like a credit note. You can go to any knowledge provider in the country and kind of get help in terms of a technical solution or a problem-solving issue on the technical side. And what it does is, I mean, the money is fine. It's 10k. It's not going to change the world, but it can add a little value to your, make your other money go a little bit further. But the other thing it does is kind of creates engagement with talent and expertise that you can lean into, source of staff potentially, or talent for your own business, and a source of expertise that you don't have in-house, So we've seen a lot, in the context of Learnovation, we've seen a lot of kind of edtech, OD-tech, talent tech companies utilising the innovation voucher that are startups in the last year in particular. And it can allow you to access, AI expertise, other kind of expertise from within research institution at basically no cost to yourself. And it can be the first step in a journey to lean into other supports like Innovation Partnership, which is maybe a more substantive collaborative grant, gives you 8% grant aid to work with an academic partner to help product and service development. So I think there's two things I maybe just call out, because again, they're really great grant aid supports. They complement nicely kind of dilutive finance, and give you kind of, make your money go a little bit further, and can prime you to lean into some other things that maybe as you grow as a company. There are some large kind of collaborative funds. I suppose the one I call out most is DTIF, Disruptive Technology Innovation Fund. Aimed at deep tech, but it's not solely for deep tech. 50% kind of grant aid, collaboration with an industry partner, academic partner, and some big check sizes on that, up to 10, 20 million, for really disruptive technology. So depending what space you're in, it's a 500 million fund that was created by the government about 6-7 years ago. We're coming into the last phase of that now, but it's kind of part of the journey, I suppose, of just kind of say leaning into the research ecosystem, availing of funds out there that you may not have come across, and complement, I think, the support and investment that colleagues on my right give. So I suppose there's probably more I could talk about, Conor, but maybe I'll just land a couple of those but just put a few markers down, and happy to talk about any of those offline after.
Very good. And Mary, I suppose to anyone that's pitching to angel investors at the moment, you typically hear about the importance of the ability of the team to execute, market validation and that sort of thing. What do you look for in founders and teams when they're coming in pitching for investment?
Before I answer the question, I might also just add to what Christian said there. Don't forget about the grants that you can get from the EU. I work for the EIC, the European Innovation Council, €2.5 million non-dilutive grant, up to 15 million of soft equity as well. So,
I thought I better stop there, Mary, before I,
Yeah, he's not going to
ran the whole clock down.
He's not going to tell you about the other things that are out there, but that's also worth thinking about. So I invest at the riskiest end of the spectrum. I invest in companies that are pre-revenue, very, very early stage. Maybe that's just a crazy thing to do, but it's the bit that I really enjoy, because I kind of miss the chaos of my own startup. So I like the really early stage stuff. So there will be no revenue, there will be no significant milestones that the team has probably achieved. So what I spend a lot of time doing, I think, is really getting to know the team and allowing them to convince me that they will execute against their plan that they have. That's something that you should all really think carefully about, sort of who you share your milestones with, because Helen will tell you that, she probably sees companies a good few years before they're ready for her to invest in. But they'll have told her what those milestones were 3 years ago. And when they come back to her later, she'll ask them whether or not they hit any of those milestones. And I do the same thing. Like, it won't be revenue, probably won't be revenues, but it will be chatting to the founders for a good few months, maybe like 6 months, to get to know them and seeing whether or not they actually do the things that they say they're going to do and achieve the milestones that they've told me that they've got on their roadmap or on their on their business plan list. So that's really important, that you actually do what you say you're going to do, and that you give the impression that you're kind of on top of things,
Any red flags that would make you do a U-turn?
Oh my God, there are so many. So I'm not even going to really be talking to a founder unless I'm really interested in what they're doing, and unless it meets those criteria that I mentioned to you earlier, because that's my personal investment thesis, that I've narrowed down the things that I'm interested in doing, that I'm going to put my money into. But then there's a whole lot of red flags, and I do have I've got my list here. I need to really believe that the company's going to scale. And like, if you turn around and tell me, oh, the market is like X billion, and all I need to do is 1% of that, I promise you, I'm just going to roll my eyes and keel over and die at that point, because it's lazy way of for you to be explaining how you're going to go to market and how you're going to, achieve growth in your company. I'm likely going to be involved with the company in some form for maybe 7 years, perhaps a little bit longer, maybe if I'm lucky a bit less. I'm looking at my American friends in the audience here, because apparently the average length of an American marriage is 3.5 years. I heard that in Lithuania yesterday. So, the average length of an angel investment is maybe going to be 7 years, so twice as long as a marriage. So you kind of really need to satisfy yourself that you like the people, you like the founding team enough that you think that you're going to get on for 7 years until you get out the other end. And for you people, as well as for looking at investors, you should also be doing that. You should be doing as much due diligence on the investors that you're talking to as what they're doing on you, because once they're on your cap table, you're kind of stuck with them as well, I like to sort of I've already sort of maybe touched on this, but seeing how the founders react when things are not going too well and seeing how resilient they are is a really interesting thing for me. So everybody can be doing great when things are going well. I think when things are not going well, that's when you start seeing how resilient people are and what they're, how good they are on their feet. Sensible valuation, I'm not going to dwell on that too much. And then, just people that are well informed. They know who the competition is, they know who their indirect competition is and their direct competition, and they are generally up to date, good on their feet, well able to front the company, and perhaps have a nice little dollop of sparkle as well. That's what I look for.
Helen, maybe to speak to some of the trends and movements that you're seeing in the venture space right now. It seems to be an ever-evolving space with AI, global uncertainty, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of new things happening in the market. So we're also like a deep tech investor in early stage as well. So it's a tough enough job. It's an exciting place to be. Of course, there's tons of opportunity in it, but you're trying to predict, the future of things. When I was studying myself, did my PhD in the area of speech recognition, that was not yesterday by any stretch. There was no data in AI, there was no GPU power, there was no jobs. So that will tell you how long ago it was. But now we're seeing such a breadth of commercialization of that type of AI technology, which was in the area of speech recognition and speech synthesis. So it wasn't there yesterday, as I said. It was a good few decades ago, and now we're seeing huge opportunity for investment, equity investment, and company growth and startup creation using AI. But it's really, really challenging at the moment because the pace of change and the disruption that it's causing is hard to stay on top of. So you really have to kind of do your work, get in your lane, figure out where you think the opportunities are going to be. There's a huge consumer movement around AI, but what that brings is massive opportunity in the enterprise as we try to figure out how a lot of these AI technologies are going to disrupt workflows and disrupt how we do what we do without making ourselves redundant, but making ourselves more valuable as employees or citizens. In that context is what I'm talking about. So that's the whole AI piece, huge push, huge investment opportunity. You got to look at companies that are, really innovating very strongly in the space and not afraid to fail in parts of it. It's going to be try, test, and you need really resilient founders to be able to do things like that, and venture backers that are going to go on that journey with you, and expect that some things that you're testing or validating aren't going to work out. But really grab the opportunity when they do. So that's the AI space. There's a lot happening. Atlantic Bridge, we're very strong in semiconductors, power chips, anything that improves efficiencies in data centers. Quantum is a huge opportunity space as well. It's only beginning. It's the next phase. There's a lot of sovereign capital across Europe and the US has gone into quantum companies. We're only now seeing venture investors getting into that space. There's massive opportunities in defence as well. This is dual use defence technologies. I've just been in Brussels recently, so thanks for shouting out about EIC. It is a huge wall of capital that's coming into European companies, not just for those that are in defence, but civilian use of offensive technologies to improve our security as a single market, and all of the complexities that come with that. So you're trying to stay on top of a lot of these big trends in the market, and then there's climate and sustainability, but using and trying to spot technologies from research that really have been under development for 5, 10, in some cases 15 years, and you're trying to get the timing right for some of these trends in which you can invest in a company and have great conviction that you will return capital within a certain period of time. In Mary's case, you referenced 7 years. In a lot of early stage startup companies, it can take 10, it can take 12, it can take longer. So you have to be very patient and patiently create value as these companies grow, and be able to support them when there's ups and downs and when you're in the trenches along the way. So yeah, a lot of great trends happening, a lot of money going into certain areas, and others are being slightly, I suppose, a little, not neglected, but they're cooler. Cooler as in cold, not cooler as in, you know what I mean. But there's, healthcare is always something that's been consistently very strong here in Ireland from a medical device perspective, but we're seeing a lot of AI applications now in healthcare as well, in digital health. So we certainly have a great basis here in Ireland to lean into those trends and stay with our strengths. And I think the capital will follow into those trends.
In terms of the time period that you mentioned, there seems to be a gap for companies that raise a seed round and to get towards Series A, and you hear more and more about bridge rounds being done to help. What advice would you have for those companies that have just raised a seed and want to become ready for the next Series A round? Yeah,
there's a notable gap in the Irish market. In fact, there's a notable gap in Europe for scale-up financing, and this is why many billions of euro are being committed by the European Innovation Council, not just from the grant perspective, but from the equity side as well. The EIC fund will start to deploy over 3 billion in the coming years, and more to follow with that. So the scale-up, that's not going to solve the problem for everyone. In the Irish market, in the Irish context, there is a very acute financing gap for scaling companies. However, those that are achieving their milestones and those that are demonstrating that they're developing their companies within the markets that they're going after are being successful in raising financing. Some of that, and a lot of that financing is from overseas. A lot of it is US financing. So Irish companies are being funded. There's a company I'm on the board of, Provera Medical, a Trinity company, recently raised an $80 million scaling round with 2 US funds backing it. Of course, we would love if other European and Irish scaling funds were there, but the fact is the company got funded, great, it can continue on its journey. But we do, and the EI and the Exchequer are making moves to increase more capital, and there's a lot of work being done, and it's patient, hard slog work to get more private capital into the market. From other institutional areas like insurance companies, pensions, all that kind of stuff, and to try to get more of an allocation from the private capital markets into venture, which is going to be crucial for long-term sustainability of both the venture market, of our companies, so we can have a full ladder of finance from seed right through to growth.
Very good. Mary, something that we see on our side in PwC is small little nuance items holding up due diligence, silly things that people could have gotten ready from the very start. You're obviously in early days, pre-revenue. Could you speak to the importance for getting things kind of right early days and those habits following you right throughout your scaling journey?
Yeah. So I've got a bit of a list here of things that's common mistakes for startups, some of which I've made myself, some of which I was lucky enough not to make, but I'm going to rattle these off and then come back to the due diligence point there, Conor, if I may. So, first one up, taking money off the wrong people. Right, this bit's really important. Taking money off the wrong people is a big no-no. Focusing on the wrong things, especially people that have come out of the corporate world, spending a lot of time doing handbooks and policies and having meetings and things like this, when really what you should be doing is getting the product ready to MVP stage and selling like Billy O, because actually grants are not the cheapest form of money. Revenue is, because cheapest and the best. Because grants are great, they're fantastic, but there's an overhead that goes alongside it, which isn't adding to your customer base. Time that you're spending filling out all those forms that you need to do, you're not bringing on customers in that time. People that start off B2C, and really they should have been B2B, but they didn't realise how much money a B2C is going to cost to do the marketing. That's another really big no-no. Founder CEOs that don't network enough, because a founder's job, two things mainly: attracting talent into their growing business and making connections so that they can raise investment when they're ready. Both of those activities require an enormous amount of networking, because you can't abdicate it to somebody else, you have to do it yourself. Bringing on the wrong advisors, you've all seen this everywhere. People that, talk a good game, but when they come into your business aren't really adding any value. And if any of you have got those, just get rid of them. Parting with too much equity at the pre-seed stage. That's my list.
Very good. Christian, I suppose you're dealing with a lot of innovative enterprise ideas coming out from spin-outs and stuff. Talk a bit about the IP, the importance of that, having it protected, that sort of stuff.
Sure. Just before maybe I do that, just to come back on kind of the scaling point, talk about funding certainly, and there's a lot of changes in the European ecosystem that have been touched on that it's hopefully going to be a lot more firepower to the equation, as well as policy changes and the dual use in particular. We've been really locked out of kind of certain kind of funding approaches in Ireland because of kind of legislation and worries about crossing lines from kind of civilian to defence. But I think that is a context that's going to change significantly in the years ahead. But just one other point on when we're talking about scaling, funding is fine, but there's also an ambition piece as well. So there's lots of companies certainly would have worked with on the EI side that were doing very good business, but they actually didn't realise themselves maybe at certain points in time the potential that the business actually had. So, and there's one entrepreneur, Cork-based, fantastic founder, generated a very good business, doing 5-10 million a year, and really about 10 years ago, kind of went on a leadership development kind of program actually that opened up kind of his eyes in terms of the really boundaries that he could push at, and his business now is heading towards 1 billion a year over a 10-year period, and actually it was within, it's just he was kind of lighting that fire, and so just for any founders out there, kind of really push the boundary out on the mission as much as you can, because you may not realise the full scope of what you can do. So it's kind of, so the funding is fine and there's other dimensions to it as well, but just bearing in mind the ambition piece is important, and cultivating that, and it's also for the supporters of the founder and the team to help them really kind of light that fire. So just a kind of important piece on the. We
often see pitch decks, and you'll see like the projections. You've seen this over 5 years, and it's going to look mental growth, right? And you're like, okay, great, now show me the other one, and it's like really like gentle growth, and you're like, so you see both sides of it, and sometimes you say to the founder, well, sorry, these are my conservative figures. And you're like, well, I see the market opportunity for this particular technology and this, that, and the other. Like, what would those numbers like? And then they go, oh yeah, that's in the appendix, and they'll show you that the next slide. So it's like, just have conviction over what you think your numbers might be and where you think your go-to-market might, how you might approach your market. And they're the set of figures that people get bought into, not the mental one, and not the one that's too flat, the uber conservative one, but actually the one that you really believe that you can achieve with whatever team you're going to build and so on. So get comfortable with that, because it does frustrate me when I hear that, no, they're the conservative figures, Helen. Like, you're making me do the work to figure out what your job will be, which is to grow the company. So tell me how you think you're going to grow it. And don't be afraid to be ambitious, of course, but not like the mental stuff where you can't, that's unachievable.
Yes, yeah, and that pushes the credibility. But it was just the point that there may be a bigger fire within that's that can be kind of dampened down, and that's maybe we're often kind of having the foresight to kind of build in good boards and advisors as well to kind of help you have those conversations as well. So it's not just about your own. Maybe a kind of a disconnected ambition, that it's kind of grounded in reality. And it's timing as well, because even the same entrepreneur that I'm thinking of, probably the market dynamics weren't quite right actually for what they were doing maybe 5-10 years ago, and that has changed, and so there's an opportunity they can now surf on. Going back to the IP question, I suppose, how long do we have? I mean, I guess what I would say, so part of my role within EI, I guess, so I head up what's called Knowledge Transfer Ireland. It's I suppose something that was put in place by the government about 10 years ago to kind of bring some consistency and kind of clarity to how public funded IP is managed within the country. And we have something called the National IP Protocol, which sends out, I suppose, kind of transparency for kind of stakeholders about how IP is kind of created, how it's managed, how it's commercialized, and particularly from the kind of third level ecosystem. We also have a kind of complement to that, even within EI, we've got IP advisory for companies in terms of what they need to do to secure their assets appropriately for the journey they have ahead. We have the kind of the IP framework we have in Ireland is very well respected. So we kind of took a decision maybe, let's say, over 10 years ago that because we're a small country, one of the advantages of that is we can kind of get all the stakeholder groups together, and we can actually put a framework in place that everyone kind of sign up to. Not perfect, but it's certainly one that is, I think, recognized internationally as providing a lot of transparency and certainty. And for any kind of founders on the ground, we have a lot of support and advice in terms of kind of showing, I guess, the roadmap for how you can kind of manage IP and kind of commercialize IP effectively, and reduce some of the kind of maybe some of the fear factor and some of the unknowns, I guess, about developing a kind of IP-led business. So we have a lot of publicly available information, and we have a kind of team as well in-house. I'm very happy to kind of advise and discuss some of those issues. So what I'd say is, if you have a kind of business that has an IP dimension, and every business should, because it's not all about patents, it can be about know-how, it can be about trademarks, it can be about copyright, it can be about kind of other design rights. You probably have an IP dimension. So there's supports out there within the IP office, the National IP office, is also a lot of very good free material and advice. So there's certainly no shortage of I think, kind of advice and supports out there for you as an innovator. And if anyone has any questions around that, I'm happy to kind of take them offline or come and chat to me afterwards. So.
Very good. So before we kind of wrap up for questions, maybe a final word of advice from each. Maybe Helen, we can kick off with you. Final word.
In general.
Just for anyone out there.
Get plenty of sleep.
Raising money.
Or general life advice, but
I'll hold off on the life advice. I'm very good at it. The funding bit, yeah, build your relation. It's all about relationships. Everybody thinks this business is about money and capital and returns and all that. It's 10 years at Atlantic Bridge now, and it's all to do with people, human behaviour, how to deal with stuff and people when the shit hits the fan, and how to continue to add value to your company and build a team that want to work with you and for you and for your investors. And the whole thing, it's like I studied engineering. I wish I'd done psychology, and maybe at this stage I might get some recognition for it, because I feel like the people bit, the challenges that you face in this type of business are genuinely a lot to do with people and the psychology of people. So build your relationships, value your relationships. If you make a contact or an introduction, or somebody rings to advocate for you or whatever it is, make sure that you value those relationships and what people do, for you. Say thank you to them. Really build the network bit. When you show up at events like this, I always say you give a bit, but you take a bit, or maybe you met somebody that'll give you a bit of advice, but give a bit back into the network as well by offering to help somebody else.
very good. Mary?
So that was great advice that Helen just gave you all there. I'm going to add to it in a similar vein. So I would say raising early stage investment is very hard. The environment and the landscape at the moment is tough. make sure that you're approaching the right people, the right investors. This is really, really important. And I would strongly advise you to work a bit harder at it and take smart money. It's going to help you later when you've left me and you've gone on to Helen. It's going to help you, because taking dumb money is just money. Work a bit harder and take the smart money. Bring people in that, as well as investing their money into your business, are going to open doors for you, and they're going to make connections for you, and they're going to help you with that next check and with the bigger bid. That's my advice.
Christian, the time.
Well, look, I suppose I go just for one word, and collaboration. So I think that's the horizontal thing that can bring value across lots of different things: access to talent, access to expertise, access to funders, insights in terms of your business, your sector, your technology, the future. So collaboration is kind of my big.
That was one of my other C's, by the way. You've just reminded me.
Yeah, and actually the advice on psychology, because I was a scientist by training, but I kind of also wish I'd done psychology now on reflection, 20 years on. So, but yeah, collaboration, that's the accelerant for growth, for innovation, for everything. So, yeah.
Very good. Not sure if there's any questions coming through, Tom.
There's a couple. I'll just run up to the mic so people can hear that.
We love questions. Please ask us questions.
Yes. So a couple of questions have come in on the Slido app here. So one of them, the one that just came in here, that's pretty good. It's an either/or question, and it says, fail fast or persevere and pivot. With the majority of startups failing, what are the key markers of a business in decline before the founders can see it? I guess fail fast.
Is that an either or fail fast or
persevere and pivot?
But kind of one of the, I think they're kind of the same. Like do the fail fast bit and then like either stop completely and say you know that it was wrong, that whatever you validated was wrong, and you're going to do something completely new. But if there's a pivot opportunity, absolutely try to pivot. And many of the businesses that we invested in the very early stages have pivoted. They didn't pivot too far off the mark, but they might have, tweaked or flexed or, into some other part of the market perhaps. But I think they're kind of one and the same.
Anything to add, Christian, Mary?
All startups pivot. All startups pivot. It's just how it works.
Yeah, maintain that openness and flexibility, I think. So don't get too deep into one trench that you can't see out or over on. So.
Great, thanks. Okay, I think this one's going to be kind of interesting, but I'll probably throw it at. I'll throw it out there to everybody. This is, how do you solve the catch-22 of VCs requiring traction before they invest and startups needing funding to get traction?
Yeah, so a lot of the companies, so we invested pre-seed as well as Mary, and in fact, a lot of our portfolio companies that have gone on to raise Series A and beyond are still pre-revenue. These are deep tech companies. Many of them are in the healthcare space, and they won't be commercializing anytime soon. The traction piece, certain businesses you will expect to see traction because you will expect to see customers and revenues really, really fast, and a lot of those might be in the enterprise software space. Other businesses, mainly in deep tech, are don't really follow that model. But what you're trying to do is build up an evidence base all the time of some kind of commercial validation to say that, maybe what's working in the lab is now actually going to be commercialized in real life in companies, and revenues will come from it at some point in time that people will place value on it. So you're looking for all of those other types of customer wins, customer validation, all that kind of thing, rather than just pure traction.
So this is going back to your be careful with your milestones comment from earlier. It's set those milestones.
It's also very important for you to have a coherent story and to develop that story and to collect your stories as you go along, so that when you go and speak to someone like Helen, you can tell her about the customers and the things that they've said to you and the people that have made you promises and have given you letters of intent and all of those things. You need the story.
If the market's big enough, like if the prize is big enough, certain seed investors and pre-seed investors will invest very. We've invested in companies and the company didn't even really exist yet. We're setting up cap tables and shareholders agreements and everything. So there's no traction there, but you're making a bet and having a conviction on a market opportunity and whatever the team and technology is.
Great. So, guys, I promised Sarah Clark I'd give her 20 minutes for predictions at the end. So we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you to Conor. Thank you to all the members of the panel here.